I've been doing a lot of emceeing lately for events, but I'm pretty nervous right now because I've never actually talked about the things that I've done. I'm always better at talking about other people and other things, so this should be very interesting for me. Hello.
Yeah.
No, there's so many people here I love and respect, and so many people I've never met before, so this is actually really exciting for me. Hello, everybody. My name is Johnny Esquivel. I'd like to think I have a long history in Fresno for my age. Started promoting and putting on shows under Religious Appeal, I would say starting in 2005. And also working with Numbskull Productions. We did a lot of things over at Belmont, Big Games, Exit. Oh, yeah, all the multiple names that it had. And then Starline, and then we eventually bought it, named it Strummers. Rainbow Ballroom everywhere. Yeah, so I've been just kind of hopping around a lot of Fresno. Also was a DJ on KFSR from 2009 to 2011 or 12. Keep forgetting the years, but I was on the Evening Eclectic, hosted a show Thursday night, and really put a lot of local bands on there with some hardcore music, with some indie music, and it was a messy 3 hours, and it was really fun. And then also, for about a year and a half, oversaw Fresno Famous with the Fresno Bee as well, for a good while towards the end of that there. Moved to Las Vegas in 2013 or so, again, totally forgetting all of my years. And with that, ended up tour managing some bands. One was a band called Sea Haven, another band, if you know locally, from Indian Lakes, so went out on the road with them for a good while. And now I am helping with a lot of entertainment with MGM Resorts International in Las Vegas. We just finished the Grammys. We just did the whole BTS takeover, which was an insane crash course in music for me. I don't know how familiar you guys are with BTS, but I thought I knew the music. I knew nothing about them. It's chaos. And then about to jump into the Billboard Music Awards project coming once I fly back home. So, but really I want to spend a lot of time. I wrote so many notes down. So humor me. It's kind of like a history of just different things that I went through in Fresno and just how I kind of absorbed and learned a lot. But yeah, I started going to shows. So there's two moments for me that really were super important to me when it came to booking and kind of becoming involved with music. They both happened in the 7th grade. The first moment, my friend who, I went to a school here called Our Lady of Victory, no longer around anymore, but it was a small Catholic school. My friend was getting a lot of other friends that were kind of involved in the music, and we were really close. We knew each other for 10 years, so my parents trusted them. We snuck off to an old venue called CBA. It's over in Chinatown, has not been around for like 20 years, but we used to see a lot of punk shows out there. Or there used to be a lot of punk shows there. I only went to like 1 or 2 and was kind of like a fly on the wall, and everything was incredible to me, just being like 7th grade watching punk bands. Wild time. And then going to that show, Tower Records was still around, and I used to go to the listening station, listen to a lot of the music they would put out. They put out this one artist, or they had one artist there called, her name was Reiko. It was a small independent CD, and they put it there for like promotion, hopefully somebody listens to it. I did listen to it, fell in love with that CD, bought it, and to me, like she was, looking back on it now, she was like a small LA musician, but in my head, like 7th grade mind, she was like the rock star, and she was like the top of the world. I reached out to her via email, and thinking that she would never reach back, she reached back like in a day. And that was like huge, like the biggest thing for me. And I said, hey, my Catholic school is putting on a carnival. Would you like to come play it? And she did. She's like, yeah, like how much can you offer us? And blah, 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 blah. And I was like, what? I didn't know what I was doing, but I was just so fascinated by it. I don't remember what we ended up paying just because I had to work with my Catholic school.
Yeah.
I think it was like, here's some drink tickets, here's like some gas money, and maybe like we can give you some corn dogs. And that, she came, she played, she was incredible, took photos with all of my 7th grade, 8th grade friends.
So
And it was just the coolest thing. And I think after that I was like, okay, like I feel like I want to just be more involved with like live music. Not maybe necessarily booking, but like I see myself kind of inserting myself into all of this a little more. So yeah, I just became super, super obsessed with music after that. After that, started going to San Joaquin Memorial, which is going to lead to kind of my explanation of religious appeal and where that name came from. But started just attending local punk shows from there. Man, I don't know how many people are familiar with some of those bands, but there was All Dead, Civil Duty, The Fallouts, Not For Hire was around back then. Man, there's like so many like just cool like punk bands, and you would see them at like wherever, like just like house shows. I think I saw one band play like a mini mart parking lot. There was an ice rink.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was just so like, I was so into it. I booked that one 7th grade carnival show. And then I turned 18 and I was like, you know what? Like I'm way more involved in this. I think it'd be cool to do it again. So that leads to now end of 2004. I found this demo on SoulSeek for this band called Set Your Goals, which was kind of like a pop punk band that was doing really well with like the hardcore scene, but they only had like 5 tracks. And I thought like those 5 tracks were so incredible. I would listen to it every day on just the big computers that everyone used to have when you log into AIM and talk to your friends. And I thought it was just the coolest demo. So I reached out to that band on MySpace and said, hey, would you guys like to come to Fresno? And they said, totally, yeah. We're in the middle of a tour. I think it was like early December when I hit them up. So we were looking for a show on January 1st. So it's like, oh, I have no idea what I'm doing. But okay, so I reached out to some of my other friends that were super involved in like punk music as well, and they helped me get my first show, Set Your Goals, at the Pinedale Boys and Girls Club, which was so fun. $6. The venue took $5 a head. I did not know what I was doing. And then ended up paying Set Your Goals out of my pocket a little bit and some other bands just because I wanted them to come back and I was still so in love with them, and it was absolutely like incredible. From there, Set Your Goals really helped me out, where they would start to give my names to like other punk bands. And so there was a band from Michigan, called Fireworks that I was super in love with. And so they got my name saying, hey, we want to come through before we play some festival in San Diego. And then we would do them in garages. There was another band called, they're still around, they're still doing very well. Actually, a Fresno band is it Graduating Life from Mom Jeans is on tour with Joyce Manor and Story So Far, if anyone knows. Mom Jeans, okay. So, Story So Far, they came through town and just played like warehouses and whatnot. So I got thanks to Set Your Goals, I kind of started just booking one show a year. And it was just super fun. And we just, wherever we could find with just garages, houses, different things like that. And kind of going back to, that first show, everybody who I knew had promoter names. I couldn't even tell you some of those names because there was quite a few people trying to like do shows, and I'm like, I literally don't know what to call it. I don't want to call it Johnny Presents or whatever. And so my friend said, well, you just graduated from SGM, so your shows probably have religious appeal. And so I was just like, well, Religious Appeal Presents. And so I just kind of ran with that for years. And then nobody, for some reason, would look at Religious Appeal and thought that it was a religious apple. which led to the logo with the cross inside of it. And I used that for so long. It's like, well, since nobody can read, we'll just call it an apple. So that's kind of the backstory behind all of that stuff. I would say a lot of my booking really started when the CYC opened downtown. Out of curiosity, like, who's been to who went to CYC? Woo! It's a little spot over on F and Kern, just right in the middle of Chinatown, and you walk in, and it had like every step you took, the floor would creak. It definitely had kind of like a funk to it, but we're like, oh, this is perfect. This is like the place to throw a show, and yeah. Almost 5 years. My first show was January 1st, 2005. And then I would say really things started to take off January 1st or 2nd, 2009. And that was, it was Comadre, Graph Warlock, some other bands. I actually did like 100-something kids that night. And I'd never seen 100 kids like in one room that was like under like a religious appeal show. So I was like, oh shit, this is cool. Like, maybe I can do this a little more. Now that I have like a space, now that there's like a venue that's just, hey, come on in. You don't have to pay like $1,000 to rent it out. You don't have to pay a ton of money for like full staffing. Like, I can probably do this a little more. And so that led to me doing, again, just more shows under like religious appeal. I created a list, so please humor me with that. It's just some of the bands that we had come through, either under religious appeal or under different people. We did Have Heart, Shook Ones, Story So Far, Ruiner, Nails, Ludact, Bane, Outbreak, Lemuria, Backtrack, 100th, Ceremony, who played Coachella right after they played CYC, which is real interesting. Trash Talk, who did the same thing, played Coachella right after playing CYC. Flatliners, Violation, Sea Haven, Trapped Under Ice, Touche Amore, Rotting Out. We did so many bands there, and for so long that was just such like a hub for just so many like kids to come through. There were so many people, like I would run the door and you would just see somebody's like, I've never been to a show before, and they walk in with like $5 and just like like did not know where they just got dropped off. It was a really fun time, and I really owe a lot to CYC because that space really helped me just do so much more on top of like leading up to like the house shows and different things like that. And in the middle of that, I would still book shows over at like Starline and whatnot, and it was a lot of like passing out flyers like, hey, obviously Starline seems a little safer for you, but come check out this random address where we're doing shows out there. Come check out CYC, which is in the middle of Chinatown, and everything shuts down at 5. So it's just a really fun time, and I grew. Fresno especially holds a very special place in my heart when it comes to just the idea of local music and whatnot, because I just saw so many people really want to look out for each other, because we knew it was kind of like a rougher neighborhood. We knew that we had to keep everybody safe. So the venue also did have some rules in place where say, hey, please don't smoke weed around the venue. Don't drink around the venue, especially, all these different things. And we want to make sure that people, if we have kids here, we're not sending them home drunk, which is kind of an outrageous thought in a weird way for a punk venue to kind of act in that way. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Gilman Street, but we kind of took a lot of the ideas. So Gilman Street's a venue that started off in Berkeley in the 80s, and it's where a lot of our favorite bands, or a lot of bands that we just know, like Rancid, NoFX, AFI, and whatnot, got their start at those venues. So Green Day. Oh, Green Day was the house band that would play like all the time.
I'm sorry, what was the name of the venue again?
Gilman Street.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's still there.
Yeah, one time a guy on Tinder was being really pretentious with
Oh, no.
Well, I asked him, I was like, what's the Gilman? I wanted him to explain it to me, and he's like, it's the Gilman. And I'm like basically trying to make me feel like I was stupid for not knowing. Sorry,
Also, this is what I'm looking for too. I'm looking for more of just kind of like, if you have any questions or some comment, please let me. But seriously, like, that does happen. That's unfortunate. But honestly, it's a space that's for everybody. You come in right when your first show. You're already a member. You get like a little membership card. You pay like a $2 annual fee, and it's just your agreement that like you're not messing up the venue. You're respecting it, and please don't bring your 40 and drink it in front, because the thing is, we're a punk venue. We are always on thin ice, and that's what CYC over in Chinatown applied for a very, very, very long time. And I think that really formulated a lot of my ideas. Like, I jumped into Fresno punk, like I was saying earlier, with just a lot of the local bands, and I was just so excited. And there was something that's just like, I had no idea this exists, and this like exists right under my friends' noses and my parents' noses and everything else. And so for them to kind of go to a venue and it seemed a little more organized, and we can kind of control a little more in regards to like making sure that we were protected, was actually really, really, really fun. So I owe a lot to that venue.
John,
yes.
How did you find out about the CYC, or like how did you even figure out to get booked in there?
It was like, I would say for 2 months, the CYC was like rumors. It was Ask a Punk. Ask a Punk was really what it was. I feel like maybe people have seen that before. Like, if you've seen, especially like in Tower or around like Grizzly, there was maybe some posters that were like up. Friends know.
Yeah.
Yeah, no comment on that one.
But women,
but yeah.
like women were basically voluntarily keeping that open, like it was, Rajni.
And we need to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We really do.
Yes,
we
we
really
do.
do. To break away from my whole conversation, I did put out some Instagram questions, and what I did ask what people really did like about Fresno, and maybe some of their dislikes with Fresno music. I did get 2 that said, it seems like a boys club. And I think that there's a lot of things, like, obviously I don't have like a real solid answer for that, but I think that like everybody, and even looking back on it, I could have looked more at myself with my own booking. I could have looked back on just a lot of other things, because it's a real thing, and I think it's very easy to dismiss things like that. But yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that was one response that I got. And yeah, I think that that's something that people can really look forward to in the future when it comes to, I don't even think we're talking about just being in bands. I think it's just overall everything, like just making people feel safe. And that leads to another thing that was kind of going on. When I first started going to shows, and I felt very much a part of it, but at the same time, I didn't see somebody like myself in it. Like, I didn't see other Latino queer people involved, for starters. Or I think it was also maybe like a time where people feel like they couldn't say things, like, or really out themselves, or yeah, those responses really got me thinking about how I grew up a little bit in the scene, but then also maybe how I acted growing up. But I think there's a whole conversation to be had with things like that.
Well, John, you just said it. It's like, it's boys club, white boys club.
Especially hardcore music.
Straight white
As much as I love hardcore music, especially. I mean, yeah, again, I think there's lots of things to think about that, and it's something.
It's complex.
It's super complex, and I've thought about it a lot, and I wish I could say something, but it's a lot of thinking. I think it's a lot of reflecting.
Just grateful to be where we are now, honestly.
Yes.
And the progress of where we can go.
Yes, absolutely. And I think one thing I've also loved about Fresno is that it can really, Fresno hardcore and Fresno punk, I think, fostered some of those ideas, maybe not to the full extent, but much more than, say, if you're going to be in LA.
Yeah.
Which I think is a really big thing to think about. And I think for just a lot of bands or a lot of artists who want to do things, I was thinking about this morning too. It's a little bit of a free-for-all sometimes in Fresno, which is really nice. You're kind of not tied down to the constructs of just what it is to be a, you hear so many stories about friends wanting to move to LA, wanting to move to New York, wanting to move to the Bay Area, and being in a band. And then you kind of have to put yourself in. But the one thing I like about Fresno, and I would say that actually helped out for me, is I was just kind of like, no, fuck you, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. Like, you can just kind of do whatever you want, and people will kind of be like, actually, that's cool. And I really, really, really respect that about being from Fresno and being a part of just a lot of the music here.
Fresno's the Wild West.
It really is. And I'm going to touch a little bit of that more, for sure, with some Catacomb party stuff, because it was definitely the Wild West with Catacomb. Let's see. Okay, so I touched a little bit on going to CYC, did a little bit on the logo. Oh, another note on the logo. One of my, that didn't come into play until I was actually already in college. My buddy Edgar, who was a hardcore kid from Salinas, moved here, designed that for me. There you go. He designed it for me, and I think he was so proud of it for like a week. And then after that, he's like, I hate looking at that. And I think he got really... He's glad he made it for me. But I think also when he started to see different things like kind of plastered around town, because I would go nuts with flyers. And when he would see like the poster, like a Catacomb party poster, like wherever, he was like, fuck. But yeah, I'm in debt to Edgar, who's now working with a bunch of design companies up in Portland and whatnot. I owe him a lot. So with the CYC, I would also like to point out that there was a lot of eyes on the venue. A lot of people maybe who didn't necessarily step foot into it, but a lot of people who are like, oh, there's like a lot of people that are going here. I'm seeing like YouTube videos, or I'm seeing posts on MySpace to like Instagram to Facebook and things like that. Like there's a lot of different chatter about it. And I think there's some credit that I need to give out to KFSR, the other DJs who were involved as well, who I would pass them like some MP3s and they would play the music on the radio station. Mike Oz, who used to be with the Fresno Bee, was really, really, really big on mentioning, he would do a weekly kind of weekend roundup of what things were kind of coming into town. And they were really fun to kind of to look and watch, and I would even learn about shows that were going on around town from him. And occasionally he would put a religious appeal show in, be like, hey, I know that Ceremony's playing Coachella, and if you want to see them in like 100-person capacity room, you can see them here. I'll kind of jump around a little bit. He also, in a really fun way, we used to have a lot of parties at this house called The Ranch that had a basement, and we would always attract way too many people at this house show. And he knew about it, and for the very last ranch show, he put it as one of his 5 things to do with the house address. In the Fresno Bee. In the Fresno Bee. Like the address printed. And he reached out to me the day before. He's just like, hey man, I just want to let you know, like, I think the shits you're doing is cool. I'm going to put this house address in just because I know, like, the cops can come, but then it's the last one. What are y'all going to do? I'm like, that's fair. So he was a really big, really big help for us as well. Oh, as I lose my place. And then, I don't need that. Who else do I owe? Yep. Yep. The block of it? Thursday from 9 to midnight, I was already using the religious appeal name, and I tried to call it Apple Hours, but that never took off. If only. That's a great label. I would play a lot of Occam's Razor, and I wrote Occam's Razor down on my notebook because how many times am I going to keep jumping around to different things? Okay. So when I'm going to jump around one more time. That's a lie. I'm going to keep doing it. So when I first started going to shows, there was a local band called Occam's Razor, and it was a 3-piece, and like you just knew, like if you asked them to play like jazz songs, they would play like probably some jazz songs for you. But it was super thrashy. All their songs were like a minute long, and it was just chaos. They were chaos. And so they never played. I never really saw them play venues. I know us as Numbskull would try to ask them to play some bigger shows, and they're just say no. They used to only play house shows. and they used to book their own house shows and have bands come through. And my ideas of booking really came from their drummer. His name is Jordan, Jordan Sobolou. Incredible drummer. And when it came to, just booking and how to treat bands and taking everything out of the night, giving it to all the bands and whatnot, I really built my foundation off of that. And I think with just the random shows that he would somehow get the keys to like an abandoned building sometimes and then say, hey, we're all going here. And then we would go and be like, oh, fuck, you could do this anywhere. Yeah. You could just kind of like do anything. I feel like even like as like weird Fresno PD can be, a lot of times they don't care about some of those like those things that happen. It's very, very bizarre. But yeah, that's my little Occam's razor thing. He was really, really inspirational for me when it came to starting to book and whatnot. But then going back to like, other people I owe, Mike Oz from the Fresno Bee for printing home addresses in the Fresno Bee. Mikey Say, who ran the Fresnon, who every time I would, I don't know if you all have ever read the Fresnon. I know he brought it back. And then he would do like podcasting. He's involved in some other projects as well. But this was, I have never seen a Fresno blogger like that, where he would just put out posts every day. And if it was a Wednesday and there was a show, he had a blog post. Even if it was an open mic at a hookah lounge. Like, he would write just about everything that was going on in town. And he was just, I think I was booking for like already 4 years before I actually met him, but he was hyping me up so much, and I really, really, really owe a lot to just people who were super, super excited about a lot of those different things. And then other promoters that were going on here as well. So we have Aaron Gomes from Visalia, was super, super, super helpful. Yeah, like that dude has booked every fucking cool like indie band in this area. Yeah. I met him for the first time and I had a 7 Seconds shirt on. He's just like, oh fuck yeah. And like he's like a punk kid who grew up and then just got into like the coolest bands and was able to pull them in Visalia of all places. Like if you want to talk about really just doing cool shit in the Central Valley, booking like someone throw out some cool name. I know he did Built to Spill at the theater in Visalia.
And at Cellar Door.
And Cellar Door. He brought Vampire Week into the Central Valley for the first time.
He put Coachella bands. Yeah.
Yes. Every time Coachella bands would come through, you just knew to watch Sound and Vision Visalia, and then he was already had them booked and locked and ready to go. It's like out of control. We did a few co-promotions together. We did Cayucas over there. We did a Cold War Kids show out there, and so he was just also willing to always give everybody a hand. So I owe a lot to him. Same to Love the Captive, John Q. He had a lot of different spaces around here. I would just work a lot with, was it the Captive? Used to be like, what, 3 doors down from here? It was like a venue that was there for like a year. Love the
Next door, I think, the Labyrinth.
Was it?
I think so.
Somewhere on this block, there was like a venue for like 2 years we would go to. Yeah. And it would be called The Captive, and then on the flyers it would say Love the Captive, like it was like a letter. So I owe a lot to him because he would help me out with getting spaces. He would help kind of hype up a lot of my shows as well. And then always, eternally and forever, I owe a lot to Eddie Numbskull, who's been doing a lot in Fresno forever. Forever and ever and ever before I even knew what music was. Just to give you guys a little background on him. He's part owner of Strummers. He's been doing since day one, pretty much managing that calendar and bringing in so many bands that I've wanted to see and could never possibly dream to bring to the venue. Before that, we did a lot of Big Games and Exit, which I have actually, that's my next thing I'll cover. Big Games and Exit, why not? He did so many bands there. And for my conversations with him, he had a kind of a harder time kind of booking here in the 90s. He started booking in the 80s in Oxnard and then went off to like Ventura and would do Santa Cruz. He was if I'm not mistaken, he was the first booking agent for AFI. I know he's super close with like Davey and those guys just based off conversations that we've had. And also did a lot of booking for some other really cool punk bands. He's the first person to bring, I think it was even before they played Patterson Hall in the 90s. I think the first time he brought Blink-182 to the Central Valley was at a bowling alley in Oakhurst. when they were just called Blink. Yeah. So he did a lot of that stuff. But he's just such an inspiration to me. He's just done so much, and that is also a dude who can like stand in the back of a room or even be in the crowd and have fun with everybody, and you would just, if you had never seen him, you would not even know that was him. He's just the downest dude. But yeah, jumping around. Do you want to hear about big games? Exit stuff that I kind of wrote down. So this predate. I'm sorry for jumping around.
Sorry, I'm going to cut you off really quick. There's a venue that's been, I was waiting to ask you this, on 8th Street, it used to be a banquet hall. What was the name
John
of it?
John's?
That's what it is, John John's.
John John's.
Jesus Christ.
Who did I see there? Pretty Girls Make Graves played there. Hawthorne Heights, first time in Fresno, was there.
Fate 13.
Fate 13, we did so many hardcore shows. Pigeon John, the first time I saw him, I think was there. There were so many like sick bands that were there.
On 8th Street.
On 8th Street,
Is that where Thursday?
possibly. So if you're driving south on 8th Street and then there's that overpass,
Yeah.
it is right before you get there. It's kind of like a half oval shaped
Okay.
It's
door.
not there anymore. The sign's gone. So I was like literally driving there the other day. I was like, what the fuck was the name of that venue?
It was a great place.
Thank
Yeah.
you for relieving me of that. Like,
John John's, yeah. So another really big formative thing for I think just a lot of Fresno kids was it started off at big games and then turned into Belmont and then the exit?
Yeah.
Okay. It's over right next to Richard's Prime Ribs. It's just a gray building. I spent so much time there. And I wrote down some of the bands that have played there as well. Let's see. So, and keep in mind that many of these were very poorly attended. Say Anything when they opened up for Tsunami Bomb. The Aquabats. Hatebreed. Fall Out Boy right before they put out Sugar We're Going Down. My Chemical Romance with Avenged Sevenfold. Thrice, which was way too packed. Circle Jerks played one of their last shows before initially breaking up, and then they got cut off, and Keith Morris went on a really big tangent on stage and then was so mad he just played 4 back-to-back Black Flag songs, and that was incredible to watch. And then right after he walked off stage, Vans had just put out Circle Jerk shoes, and I was just like, can you sign these for me? And I still have those shoes. He wrote, "Are you fucking kidding me, Keith Morris?" And then passed the shoes back to me. So that was like a really big show for me. Tiger Army, Pierce the Veil. Can we also talk about how many times Portugal the Man has played in Fresno before 2010? Like, Portugal the Man has been all over Fresno well before they had that hit. It's crazy. Paramore, which apparently was poorly attended as well.
Pretty well attended.
Okay. I need these corrections from time to time, but Paramore, first time in Fresno, played there.
Before Misery Business hit the radio.
Yeah.
That was like right when they blew up.
I had the flyer, and I was like, who the fuck
I have a
is this?
picture of
Yeah.
Haley right here. I was like, dang, who is this girl? Like, she's my name. Yeah.
Circus Survive, Chiodos, As I Lay Dying, Bowling for Soup with American Hi-Fi, and Killswitch Engage. And that's just like scratching the surface of the bands that played on Belmont Street. Agrolites minus the Bear. Yeah, it's stupid. Who was that? The Chariot did play there. There's so many bands that have played. Ceremony, Blacklisted, Trash Talk played there. Yeah, so many bands have like went through that room, and I feel like for a lot of kids who were growing up in like the 2000 to 2010 era, that was just kind of like, in our mind, like we got to see rock stars weekly, like going through there. It was just so fun. To work, I was just, let me see, started working there with Numbskull. I was still a teenager, didn't know what I was doing, so I just take money, run the door, and whatnot. And that was just like a blast. And then from there, that I would say that's also, like Eddie would also say, that's probably when like we just started to do so much more. And then from big games kind of becoming such a thing, from there that's how we got, I would even say that's how we got Modest Mouse at Rainbow Ballroom. That's how we got Bad Religion at Rainbow Ballroom. Just like these bigger bands to come through. because I think that like the big games especially was kind of like an eye opener to a lot of people. Like, oh fuck, you can bring some actually like cool bands, and it doesn't need to be. And I'm not talking shit, but I'm saying it doesn't need to be Sum 41. It doesn't need to be Good Charlotte. It doesn't need to be like these other bands. It can be these bands that are up and coming and pulling up in a van with a flat tire. Like, and it could just be exciting. And I owe so much to that. Also, for the record, my first show working Numbskull, if anyone's familiar with hardcore music, was Madball, Sick of It All, and Warriors.
I remember that show.
Which was a really violent show to work. I was very scared, and Madball brought their own security.
Oh wow.
I was definitely a teenager. I was like 17-ish, maybe? I need to look back. But Madball brought their own security, which was really just a member of one of their crews from New York City. Like, no license, whatever. He had like street license, essentially. And the whole time, he just sat on stage with a cigar, just like. And I was like, no one's gonna go up to him and tell me he can't smoke in here. Like, nobody. And I used to be put on like, because I was just a kid, I used to be put on pot duty at like certain shows and be like, can you put that out? And that one, I'm like, we're not doing this for this one. So yeah, that was like really, really, really fun.
Sorry.
A really, really, really big, yeah.
For those like smaller roles that you're talking about, working the door, weed,
Yeah.
gopher, essentially.
Yeah.
Would you say that they were like a major component in understanding the industry from the inside when you're working?
For working like the door and starting off with that?
You're looking back.
Yeah.
Right?
I would say that definitely got me associated with things like the understanding of contracts. So say I'm working the door and it's just like $10 at the door. And then Eddie was very gracious to kind of explain that to me and be like, well, this is like what we have. These are how many people we need tonight. This is how much catering was. This is how much all these different things were. And so once I really, really, really started to focus more on my own like religious appeal, that like Eddie really set a lot of the foundations of like the business side of things. And also keeping in mind where the band was the day before, where they're gonna be the next day. Also kind of thinking about the different crowds that you're attracting, like the difference between, again, like a Hateball, Madball, or Hatebreed, Madball, Sick of It All, really crazy old school show where those dudes just grew up in just chaos, versus say you're bringing like an indie folk band, and keeping those things in mind. But then also kind of understanding like the trajectory of things too on the same time. A really fun one for us, no pun intended with that. We booked Fun at Neighborhood Thrift over on Olive in the thrift store. So they played in there. What? And Isley. Yeah.
What year?
2011. Yeah. I don't remember what that was. But anyways, yeah. Like, we had them booked, and in the middle of that time, they started to get bigger and bigger. So then it's like, we need an actual PA. We need actually somebody to come watch the door, and let's keep a closer eye on pre-sale. Fun thing, also another show we had to keep in mind, the same thing happened to us for the group Heim. They put out their song Falling a long time ago. Eddie and I were having lunch at Little Peking over on Cedar and Nice, and I said, hey, have you heard this band called Heim? And he's just like, no. So he's listening to it. He's just like, oh, we're doing this festival in Santa Barbara. Maybe we could just book them. We had them booked as like an opening spot in a small theater in Santa Barbara. And then from that initial booking to when things really took off, we're like, Heim's and Pitchfork, Heim's and Spin, Heim's and Rolling Stone, Heim's and whatever. And then we ended up having, man, how did this go? We had to find pretty much like a plot of land, build a gate around it, rent a stage, and it ended up being like thousands of people that showed up to watch Heim headline. So you kind of get thrown into like these loops of things. And going back to it, this all started for me running a door. This all started me kind of like getting thrown into it and kind of understanding it and being able to consult in very minor ways for starters, and then kind of building it up from there.
And I don't want to drum on it too much, but the idea that somebody trying to get into an idea, such as what you're doing, they're going to encounter all manner of opportunities, openings, and we're running the door, for example, getting the coffee, whatever.
Right.
All of those things represent insight and opportunity within the passion, in your case music.
Right.
So it's almost, it makes sense to start at the bottom, build the foundation. So what would you, if you were to meet 15-year-old you, who has the passion, the idea, wants to,
Yeah.
what would you say to them from a foundational perspective, what they should focus on? Is that a weird question?
No. My mom almost came, and I'm glad she did it, because like one thing I would have told myself when I was younger is keep sneaking out of the house and going to shows, like for sure. But for like, I would definitely keep up with it. Like, granted, like I didn't know, I was like a kid, didn't really know the value of money. I didn't really know what I would be making at the end of a night, if anything at all, or things like that, and just kind of figuring things out. It became more than just fun for me, and I would just look back and be like, keep up with this and maybe ask more questions of what your boss is willing to disclose. Because I was already in with Numbskull, and for me, I maybe, you're very intimidated when you're like a kid, and you think you're far away from those things as just running the door, but you're really not. And I didn't realize, like going back, I was actually a part of the Numbskull family earlier than I thought. And so just keep asking questions. I should have had more confidence with some of those things. I probably would have started booking earlier too.
Sure.
But if that answers your question.
Well, thanks for indulging, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, really, I when I was a kid, I used to be pretty intimidated by a lot.
Sure.
I mean, I'm still very intimidated by a lot. But I definitely would have asked more questions. I would have asked maybe Eddie more for more insight on just what goes into booking and what the math is behind it. Even though Eddie will always tell me that there is no such thing as the equation for a show. You think you understand it, and then one show fucks it up. And especially, now that we're coming out of like a pandemic and things like that, like it's kind of a free for all right now.
Yeah.
And so if anybody does want to do a show, I would say right now is kind of perfect to kind of throw in. Especially being from Vegas, like right now, we have so many shows that are being announced at all different sizes of venues. And we even, for like the punk shows that are going on in Vegas, we have so many shows that are coming through because people are fucking hungry for live music. And people just want to experience it, whether it be, I'm dragging friends who've never listened to a hardcore band in their life to a show.
It'll
Because,
change your life.
yes,
Yeah.
they want to go to the Vets Hall and have like a $4 gin and tonic and watch people from a distance being like, oh shit. And I've been doing that a lot lately. And I think right now it's like if you want to kind of explore more of like music, the bands are hungry to get on the road right now more than ever. Even though it's a bit of a scarier time for a lot of bands.
What's
But
the,
I would.
What's the best approach for trying to book a band?
Nowadays. For what? They definitely need to be safe. Yeah, I think a lot of bands do need to be safe, and kind of figuring out where they are at. I think everybody's in a different place right now when it comes to how they're handling, like, COVID and different things like that. Everyone's kind of at a different place, and I think you need to ask how people are navigating that when it comes from finding out like their time in the green room to the stage. What are they most comfortable with? What are their needs? And I think it's important to take care of it. And I think also when it comes to like different crowd things, there are some things to keep in mind. It's a funny situation right now.
But I'm
It's like
thinking,
super funny.
What's the best medium is like you stalking them at a fucking concert and be like, hey, can you guys come?
Here's my
do the
business
Billy
card.
Show? Or is it an email? Direct message?
It was I would say, reach out to a lot of like the like if it's like a mid-sized band, I would say definitely feel free to like reach out to them or even like their management. A lot of me booking Catacomb was reaching out directly to their management.
How do you know they have management?
It's all like on their website, and I'm just like their
Yeah.
Instagram bio. I used to pull it from Facebook, and it's you can all those different things. Whew. And it's a matter of making yourself seem more professional than you actually are. I had every intention, though, to make sure the band was taken care of, but I think that they expected a guy with a 9-to-5 who booked. And I was really just like, when I first started off, like I was booking like in my bedroom at my parents' house. And I was just like, hello, band. We would like to have you on this date at this venue. And I was like wiping my nose at the same time. Like, it's just, you have to kind of put up a little bit of that. And but also have every intention of taking care of them. You know what I mean?
There's this
Yeah.
I had a friend who was booking a show, and the band was like, "Can you get us some Coke?" And he was like, "Coca-Cola."
That's a good way to play that off, especially if there's a paper trail.
I could use Coca-Cola.
I like how this just kind of went off. This is good. But yeah, no, I would, you know.
It goes into the, like, how do you even negotiate, like, what are their, what are you gonna pay it?
It's a lot of back and forth because there's so many bands that I hit up, and even bands that I am close friends with, their management has very different expectations of what I want to give, and same with the band. But again, like over the years, I realized like I was just very giddy to book shows. I was very giddy to do whatever. But then I had to look at myself and be like, well, maybe take a little bit of a step back and kind of sound like maybe some of the other emails that they're getting, even though you are a super fan. Because they don't want to book a super fan because they think you're going to show up and it's like a Holiday Inn banquet hall or something like that. It's like, no, which is fine. I bet that's going to be sick. But, yeah. But, like, if you have every intention to book them at a venue, or even if it's like CYC, you kind of weigh out those expectations and you kind of talk to them. I mean, even I know a lot of bands who were, like, punk bands who showed up to CYC were like, oh, shit. Well, here we go. Like, and it was just fun, you know? And the thing is, like, yeah, and it was something for, like, you know, that's their first time out on the road. It was, like, my time kind of, like, or evaluating how I was going to start booking and things like that. You gauge it out by the band. I wish I could answer, like, a band's, like, overall, but really it's kind of the Wild West when it comes to booking. I've been using that word a lot, but it really is. Yeah, you just kind of have to weigh out where that band is, and I was just very much involved with music that I was able to kind of pinpoint bands very early on. Some of them went nowhere, some of them did very well, but I was very much able to be like, you're getting started, can you make the 2-hour drive from the Bay Area to, or whatever, however long, this is how long I've been out of Fresno now, from the Bay Area to Fresno and play a show, or LA, or Santa Cruz, or where some of the more up-and-coming bands were, and you just kind of go from there. And I'll be honest, like, sometimes it wasn't fully their expectation, but I made really good friends and they ended up coming back. Some of those bands I ended up tour managing later on, and I can... What time is it now? I have been going on. Oh, shit. To continue. Okay, cool. But yeah, you weigh it out. But I think the most important thing I can offer is make sure that band is taken care of and making sure that you do form, like,
What
if
do
you
they
can.
really seek out the most? Like,
Where are we playing? It was like,
They want to make sure that the show is promoted. They want to definitely see a flyer beforehand. They want to make sure that you have in mind their genre. Because sometimes you could book a band that's definitely on the up and up, and it's like, man, every time I would book the band ceremony, I would get like, can I have my folk project play? It's like their songs are 1 minute long and they're screaming. And there's going to be 100 some odd people in this room expecting that.
Ceremony loves Fresno.
They do love Fresno. They do love Fresno, which is like really fun to watch them coming back. I'm sure the same thing happens with like Joyce Manor, which I want to talk. Their new album is named after Fresno. Joyce Manor is putting out a major album that is named after Fresno, which is like exciting. I want to know which show they were heading to. I hope it was Catacomb. Maybe CYC, because they did play CYC.
That place was like Catholic sardines for them.
That was fun. That was a fun show
There's
with Joyce
kids
Manor.
on the walls for them.
Catacomb show 2 was insane.
It was insane.
That is something, yeah.
Oh, Joyce Manor was the first band I ever saw live.
Where'd you see them?
At Strummers.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. That was, I wish I did not make, I wasn't at that Strummer show. I lose track of which Strummer shows I've been at. But that was a fun one. That was a super fun one. I will say, I'm going to move on to Catacomb. Because I've been like talking a lot about like
This is your
suicide
show,
and all this stuff.
Hey, John.
Yes.
Question, man. How you doing? Doing all right?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Are you hydrated? Do you need water?
I'm okay. I'm okay.
thinking talk a lot about contracts with artists sign a contract. Because a lot of things, a lot of people at Fresno don't know about the contract.
I think a lot of people do get. So the question was like just overall talking about like contracts with bands and things like that. The way I view it a lot, and I think a lot of promoters, especially if you're getting started for the first time, you will get a contract in your inbox and be like, "Ah, fuck that!" Like absolutely not. A lot of times though, I did make it a point to like review it, and I realized that a lot of bands do those things to protect themselves in a good way, and just make sure, because I know that there are some bands that are doing very well, and one thing that I've learned, and I think that's a lot of my successes is just making sure that people are taken care of, because I think we've all have seen. I love that this is being recorded. I think we've seen just some people want to book shows and maybe not have the best intentions. I will say that, just that. And I and I think that's why contracts exist, because they, you don't want to have a sold out show and then you get handed $50. You don't want to have something where you show up and we talked about even just a meal, and then they're just like, here's a pack of saltines.
Yeah, or
you know.
per diem, so they
Exactly.
That's why I'm on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think especially like going out on the road is really fucking hard. It's not easy, especially right now with like gas prices, things like that. Like touring is really hard, and then finding a place to stay every night.
They don't want you to sleep on the couch or what?
That's a lot
I know,
of
right?
people
Like,
don't know about per diem.
I mean, you can have really good shows and still sleep on couches and floors and things like that.
Sometimes you don't know anybody in the city that you're at, so there is no couches.
Right.
Yep.
And so I think that's why contracts exist, and I will talk them over. And if I have any questions, I will reach out to the booking agent. Like, let's talk about it. And a lot of times, I will say specifically, there's one agent, Merrick, who manages a lot of great bands, or used to manage a lot of great bands. I know he's still in the business, but like I would talk to him about getting a lot of really cool punk bands on the up and up. We ended up getting for Catacomb. We'll do them at Strummers and whatnot. And I'll be like, hey, I have a question about this. He's like, yeah, man, honestly, we're just making sure that the band's taken care of. We just want to make sure that when they show up, they're not like high and dry. And I think that's why contracts exist, and they can be tough for promoters, but I think that that's really, and if you have any questions, ask the agent,
I
ask
have
things.
a flat out, contracts. That's what my lawyer would be, contract.
That's, I mean,
That's why I stopped playing because it was like I was being rejected so many times.
I think that happens. Yeah, it happens. Definitely happens a lot.
I was on tour one day and I come back to Fresno and I only get $10. I was on tour for 5 days. And then I stopped playing again.
Like, I suppose coming full circle to what you were saying originally is your experience has been seeing things now that you're seeing what you went through, and it's about making people feel safe. Like,
Yeah.
you apply those principles to what you're saying, and then
I think initially when I first started booking, I thought that I was just going to have people and have a fun time. But really, I'm kind of like, I am taking care of people. I do have to kind of look at the bigger picture of it. And even though that can be scary and intimidating, but the thing is, like, do what you got to do. And I think, like, I want to make sure that people have a good time. I want to make sure that, sometimes if they need like a place to stay, or are you looking for a friend's house, or are you looking for like a hotel? Are you looking for a meal? Like, what type of meal do you want? And I'll be sure to ask that too. Just making sure that, like, when they came to town, there were some expectations that were set. And sometimes it was really hard. And then sometimes, like, it was really easy. You kind of get yourself into the mix of both, but I will say that when the bands were a little harder to work with, it kind of made everything else kind of easier down the line. And I would say that kind of led to a lot of the successes that kind of came down the road, where there was just some bands that were incredibly hard to work with, and I think that even prepared me for where I'm at right now, with some of like just different interactions with some different other artists that are beyond what I thought I would work with, and now in the long run I get it. I get it.
And you've left a great legacy in Fresno for that. Like,
I appreciate that.
yeah, absolutely.
I really do.
100%.
A lot of promoters care more about thinking about themselves as welcoming than actually being welcoming. So you're actually not just talking the talk and walking the walk. So that's why.
Well, thank you. I still love this is being recorded, but
And honestly, as well,
on my
that,
vine.
like, while you're taking care of the bands, it always seemed to me that you were focused on community and building community.
Yeah,
Making sure that not only was the band taken care of, but the people that would show up would be taken care of. And then it was
You came from a
always
place of love and empathy. Like, automatically that makes you better than most.
thank you.
You're gonna make it
Thank you.
blush.
I
It's
think.
true. It's true.
I think. Thank you. I mean, but to be real, oh, fuck it, I'll say it. I don't care. I think
Think you're true.
that I learned also a lot from promoters I didn't want to be.
Right.
Every time you look at a flyer, it says blah 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 presents whoever the band is. And I think sometimes some people would look at that and be like, yeah, I'm on the top of that. I did that. This is all me. And then walk around their show just like, not making sure, you know what I mean? I don't know. We all know. We all know. And I think I learned that just like
being like told like, so who did you bring in? And it's like, what?
But then also
There's
like
people
at
here,
the
that's
same
what matters.
Yeah. And the thing is like I made so many friends here. After the show I would hang out with all you guys.
Yeah.
And after their shows they would just fucking go home.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that. And it wasn't about, I don't know. It was I enjoyed being inserted into something that was really special, and I think Fresno will always be something incredibly special. And I think, you know, there's like a lot of like, this is like a testing ground for a lot, and I think you can do a lot. Like, oh boy.
Yeah, you got it.
We are that in between though, from
Yeah.
Bay to LA. We're that in between, and like when bands decide to stay here for the night, it's great. It's
Try to
wonderful.
keep them out of slow.
Oh boy. I think that the way Fresno is that's the part of the reason, and I'm gonna finally
Let's go there.
bridge
let's go
into
there.
it. That is the reason why we were able to do an event like Catacomb Party, because I don't think that that's something that a lot of other cities would have entertained. To kind of give some context about how that all started, that was the title of the Fierce Creatures album. And then we also, and this is something I thought about a lot when writing this down, and I have this asterisk and like highlighted. I don't think we give Joel enough credit for coming up with that name. Because I know he proposed that name with naming the album, and then we kind of ran with it. So we owe him a lot with just the concept of the name and what a Catacomb Party actually was, which was like
You found
parties.
it online. Like I remember when you found it because we were
Really?
like, sitting there, and he was talking about the catacombs in Paris, and there was this weird site that was like Reddit or something. It would pop up different weird articles.
Yes.
And he was like sitting there. He's like, "Have you ever heard of the catacombs?" And I was like, "I don't know."
I had never heard of the
And he
Catacombs,
told me about it, and it's a real place, and it's kind of creepy.
and they have parties down there.
Yeah.
And they have parties,
catacomb
and we kind of took that idea.
It's just bones and.
Yes.
Yep.
There's like bones, and people have parties as different artists and things like that. So it was the Fierce Creatures album title, and the first Catacomb Party was just supposed to be a one-time thing, where it was the album release.
Yeah.
And we were like, well, would it be cool if we did that, like in Fresno somehow? Obviously, you know, the first idea, and we're like young, stupid people. We're like, what if we did like the underground?
How thinking it, and how big did it snowball into?
Well, initially we were offered a warehouse.
Oh, okay.
So we were gonna first throw it in a warehouse, and then we ended up meeting Kate Borders from the Downtown Partnership. She ran the Downtown Partnership at the time, and she was so cool. She was just like, "Do you want to just throw it on the mall?" Like very casually. Like
okay.
we're like, "Wait, what? What does that take?"
can
She's
do
like,
that?
"Yeah." We're like, "No, like you mean like take over like."
Fulton?
Yeah, like take over like one of the vacant buildings, or like what? Like no, we're thinking bigger than a vacant. Like no.
Whole block.
Like we actually get a city permit and we hold it on the Fulton Mall. I'm like, oh fuck. Okay. And so we worked a lot with her. She got the city permits. She worked with all the different people that kind of like needed like everything checked. So a lot. I know after that, Kate Borders actually ended up joining a Downtown Partnership that was in a different city. I think she was in Phoenix. But yeah, she was just like, yeah, why don't you just do it? Like her whole thing, even her face, like, just do it. Just do it. And so we, with the Downtown Partnership, got everything handled down. She handled the permits. Then Rogue Festival also stepped in, donated their stages. One of my favorite memories, they were not happy, but one of my favorite memories is when Fierce Creatures was playing their last song and everyone's on stage singing. There were too many people on stage for it was a little wooden stage. And you could just tell they're like, get everyone the fuck off of it. Dead in 60 did a really good video on it, and you can watch at the end of how many people. So if you will look up like Dead in 60 Years, Catacomb Party, you'll see like kind of like that last song.
You can go to Dead in 60's YouTube channel, and you can see
All the
so
different
many
things.
good, like, shows over the years.
That's true. They also did the ranch,
Yeah.
the last ranch show that was in the paper. They did that. Video's up online too. But yeah, so that first catacomb we did we tried to partner with just like a lot of like local bands. We got Nankasi beer, and just kind of went from there. And then people put the bug in just the different people who were involved. We called the catahomies. It was definitely more than just Mathra and I. I think people, looking back, do credit Mathra and I for a lot, but really it was a lot of other people as well. Because the thing is, there's no way 2 people could do that. We got a lot of people involved, and everyone was asking us to do a second one, and then eventually led to a third one. That second one, we had Fashawn and Tony Allen headline. Tony Allen, absolute legend, R.I.P., incredible musician. One of the bands I used to manage, Sea Haven, the first sleepover disaster show in years, was there. And we just wanted to make sure that we got so many local bands on top of other bands that we love. And also, I owe a lot of credit to Fuse Fest before, because they did the whole local music festival. You can hop around downtown and see that. And obviously, I think that put a bug in, that gave us the thought. So I owe a lot of credit to Mikey Say and all of those as well when it comes to Fuse Festival. But yeah, those years were very chaotic, and I got into that because of Joyce Manor. That Joyce Manor show was chaos, and I think that made me rethink a lot of things. I think we expected maybe 5,000 people to show up that year, and the city gave us a projection of about 12 that came out, and it was a lot. And then for anyone that wasn't there, for the Fulton Mall, we shut down. Oh, hey. Hey, Eddie. Oh, Eddie. You missed my numbskull portion.
I've never been more proud of this guy.
It's a catacomb, I was saying. Fulton Mall, Tuolumne, all the way down to the brewery. And we just wanted to make sure like everybody had a good time, noon to midnight, all that fun stuff. It was a very, very, very hot day. Actually, all 3 of them were very hot days.
They were all in July.
They were all in July. We thought a music festival outside, but hey, it was free, okay? It was free. But like, kind of going back to talking about like just booking and things like that, I think when it came, you realize that you're heading into a different game when you head into festivals. Because you book a show and they're like, okay, this is what you do. This is how, like, this is kind of the expectations. They're like, wait, this is an all-day arts event? Tell us more about that. I was like, yeah, we're like shutting down the streets, doing all this stuff. And like, okay, well, this is a whole different thing. And it kind of, there's different expectations, and that's fair too, because there's a lot more people, there's a lot more things to kind of keep in mind, and like just security purposes and things like that. But especially with like booking Joyce in that particular setup, I learned a lot when it came to like how to dress well, Dan Deacon, and even kind of figuring out the nuances of Fashawn playing a local show as he was kind of like on the up. That was wild. So I think of the kind of going back to some other things too, of just like the questions about like contracts and kind of like where you kind of fit yourself in. I think it's a lot of rolling with the punches. Like every situation is going to be incredibly different, and you just learn a lot from a lot of these different things. And again, you kind of want to have like the mindset, this is how you do a show, this is how you do different set things, but then you go to a different venue, different capacity sizes, different things like that, an all-day free festival, and kind of the expectations of putting that on from not even just the city, but then also the artists and things like that. It's just, you kind of get yourself into different beasts and kind of like refigure things out from there. So.
Were you doing that all alone too, like on your own, or did you have collaborations that were helping you with that?
For that one, I had already had pre-existing relationships with a lot of booking agents and just a lot of relationships with a lot of local bands, and I just reached out to them and kind of made sure that those kind of things were going. But at the same time, we had another crew that was involved with setting up the lights and the staging and the artists and the stage managers and different things like that. And there was just so many people I think we were all keeping in touch with to get an event like that going. But, you know, and again, kind of going back to some other comments that were made of just about, It's a lot of partnerships. It is so many partnerships, and I think you do have to give the credit where it's due. And I think, again, like kind of going back to the whole catacomb party thing, I think Mather and I get a lot of credit, but the thing is we do have to give it to so many people, because you look at that flyer, and I think recently I even saw the stage and time breakdown of everything, and I was like, that was so much work by so many people who, were like, thank you, that was fun, and then walked away. Like, in a great way,
Talking to you, you were like in 5 different places at the same time. I was like, hey, are you doing okay? And you're like, huh?
But that was a really fun and rewarding day.
Yeah.
Like, and the thing is, like, I think that whole thing was a lot of people, kind of like a lot of musicians that were local, a lot of people traveling here. I think we gave a really good impression to a lot of traveling musicians who were like, holy shit. And also just like smaller artists, or smaller artists who maybe, I think Catacomb also gave a few their first show, because we're just like, why not? Have fun,
Let's have a good time.
And there's just so many people who worked incredibly hard, and I'll have to get all the names. But the thing is, like, I that's something I've been thinking about a lot, and on top of calling out Joel for coming up with that name, it's a lot of Tomas, what are you saying? Cool. Okay.
Were you able to pay the artist for an event that size for free? Like, it's a free event.
We did, and we found a lot of people who helped kind of financially back those things.
I mean, where does that come from? I mean, that's huge.
Personal relationships or business relationships?
It was all business. It was a lot of for example, like Tioga always takes care of their artists. Tioga was a stage, so we got them involved. They brewed a beer for us. They were such a big partner. What was it? I think the blueberry beer was my favorite beer that they brewed for us. But it's just so many people who are like, I want in, and a lot of downtown like businesses that are like, I want in. And it was just a lot of like scratching each other's back and making sure that they were taken care of as well. A lot of them hosted stages. A lot of them kind of consulted on the type of music that they wanted. And we kind of, we were the kind of like the people who kind of put them into the different spaces. Yeah. So it was fun. Okay, I talked a lot.
Talk more, brother. Talk about coffee now.
Coffee? Okay. That really, like, I've seriously talked for like almost an hour of just a lot of my different experiences, and I think that's led me to some of the things that got me to where I am today. Like I was saying, like just the Grammy projects, the BTS projects, about to jump into the Billboard Music Awards. I think it all like started here in Fresno. It all started of just like the warehouses. It started from everything else, because as I started to kind of dip my feet into it a little bit more, and I did talk about like just a lot we're working with Numbskull and kind of learning so much from you, Eddie, just when it came to like the contracts and the back end of it and the different things to keep in mind with artists. I just learned like so much from here, and that's the reason why I always come back here, because it's always just so fun, and it's just so I keep in touch with like also the local music. I still think that there's a lot of great artists that are still doing some incredibly cool things. One thing I noticed, I feel like there are a lot of local artists here that are kind of like more on the up and up, but not quite everyone is aware of it. Like I feel like there's some metal bands that are doing well and going like overseas that maybe you wouldn't even know about. Also there's say like kind of like the indie kind of like pop bands that are doing well, and we were talking about like kind of booking one of them or exploring that. Well, they're on tour. So, like a good U.S. tour.
We got sci-fi capers.
Yeah. Well, there we go. Yes. But yeah, I just think that there's so many people here that are doing incredible things. And remember that this is a very, very, very big place. And I think it's how do you kind of get people to kind of be involved in your community, and how do you kind of celebrate other people as well? Because I think celebrating people is what's really, really, really important. Because even living in Vegas, which is so like entertainment focused, there's nothing like the entertainment I see here. It's very, very, very beautiful, and I think it's really like comes from a very organic place.
Very authentic.
And very authentic. The Wild West. Somebody wants to do something weird, and then all of a sudden they got a show, and people are watching them. That's not something I'll see back home, like back in
really
Vegas.
Open to new things here, and they'll just embrace it, and it's like a safe spot for people to try things out.
For sure.
Which I think in bigger cities you don't have.
And
Yeah.
I think people still view Fresno as very small. You know, and we feel
We're
like
always a small town somehow.
we're the fifth largest city in
Fresno.
California, and yet you can still make a splash
Yeah.
if you put effort in and you want to do it.
I think that was another thing too, where it became like to like even just starting off like booking like some like punk shows at CYC. A lot of times I would get hit up and be like, so someone said that we need to come to Fresno. And I'm like, yeah, please come. Actually, it'd be really fun. And then from there it became like, we want to come to Fresno.
There's prestige. There's prestige in Fresno.
It's and it's just so fun. And
People
again,
want to have said they went to the I played CYC. It's like we're like Gilman now. Like
Yeah.
CYC is like Gilman now. Like there are bands, or even when the Bell Tower was around, there was a band who was like, I had to play the Bell Tower because I heard so much. Like there's prestige here.
when I would tour, I'd be on the East Coast. People are like, oh, you guys are from like Fresno area? I'm like, yeah, like CYC. I'm like, really? CYC?
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
I was just wondering, Joyce Maynard's new album.
I still want to figure out
I was just
which.
wondering if you feel like you were partly responsible for that.
In my head, I hope it was on their way to Catacomb. But then again, I know they played Strummers. I know they played CYC. I know they've had probably lots of times going through Fresno. But the thing is, like, we all know that drive. Finally, someone named an album after that really weird drive through Fresno.
What's the name of it?
40 Ounces to Fresno? Or is that 40 Ounces to Fresno?
Yeah.
Yeah, 40 Ounces to Fresno.
Like King Cobra.
It just came out later. They put out the name like a month and a half ago or something like that.
It's like not even out yet, right?
Yeah, it's not even out yet. Yeah, they put like a video. Also, shout out Kat from Fresno who worked on that video. Yeah. Fresno people have been doing a lot too. Like they leave Fresno and then they've just been doing some really cool projects around. And I think even like I still talk to Kat and she actually asked me a question as well. And was just like, I feel like even though I'm living in LA and she's working for like different labels out there, she's like a lot of just like my love really started here, and just like watching local bands, but then also going to see these bands that she now works with as like a fan. There was just something like so special about that to be in a Fresno crowd for her, and yeah, it was awesome.
Sorry, quick question.
Yeah.
So a lot of what you're talking about is looking back, retrospective.
Mm-hmm.
If you took a few moments and you could reflect on what you see as the future, I mean, you're on the inside. So you see local become national, become international. So to talk about it as a trend, where do you see, say, a decade from now?
Ooh.
Well, to contextualize that question a little bit stronger, how do you feel about things like Fresno and Porch Fest?
I'm hoping to see more. I mean, again, talking about Porch Fest, I hope we kind of have more things like that, and we kind of embrace more of like some of these like smaller or even like these one-day things that kind of happen. I think that I'm seeing again like these local bands start to take off, and I'm hoping it keeps with that trend, and I hope that they kind of mesh a little bit more. I would actually like to see that, because one thing I really, and again, this could be me very much just like not living in Fresno for 10 years and almost seeming like an old man, but like there's sometimes I'll come here and be like, I wish like more people were going to, was it Artificial Language is a metal band from here? And I wish there were more like maybe punk kids going to that the same way that I used to see hardcore kids go to fashion shows. And then same with like, was it Valley Palace is another one? And I wish maybe there was more chatter about them, even though they're going on these now. I'm hoping there's more intersection between all these different things that are going on, because I think that would just benefit everybody, because I know that's what I saw that really benefited to an extent.
Sure, and to pick on you just a little bit more.
Totally.
In a good way.
Yeah.
What could people do today, tomorrow, in order to ensure that this future you're talking about has a more likely result, like to end up that way? What can the peasants, so to speak?
No, I am
what
one
can we
too.
do?
Don't worry. No.
I'm just joking. But what can we do as the masses to help keep this trend going? Like, local is real.
Yeah.
It involves the community, involves all of us. So what should we really be doing tangible to ensure that it happens?
I think what we've been doing.
You just answered your own
supporting each
question.
other.
No, I didn't answer
I
my
do
own
wanna,
question.
like-
I'm not
Yeah.
inside. I can't answer the question.
Yeah, we do. I feel
Well, I
like
was just saying, like,
We've been doing
the
it.
problem.
doing it. This
I
thing,
was talking
this-
to him.
this
He's,
is it.
you know, I mean, he's like trying to meet people, and I'm like, there's not enough all ages venues in Fresno, and that's the problem.
I would definitely like to see more like all ages
That's a big
opportunities.
thing. Like, Cup of Joe was such a big part of when I was growing up, and
Yeah.
you don't have something like that anymore. They have strummers who once in a while, then you have CYC, which is like, you can't really talk about it because it's, I don't know, you know. But I mean, it's like they need somewhere where the parents are going to be like, I'm not dropping you off in the hood. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think that we also just need to kind of figure out how to reach. And I'm talking like I think some people do it well, and maybe some people haven't quite figured it out, but just more youth involvement.
yeah.
More youth involvement.
Outreach. You know?
Because the thing, like, I want to see more people when I visit that I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't lived here like in a bit, but I make my visit over here once in a while. 10 years, yeah. But then I do try to come back as often as I can, and I'll see, like, I do go to some shows and I see some people, but I would like to see just some more youth involvement. I want to see, and again, I think that this is kind of like a group effort in regards to just kind of like getting some of we know that there are bands in their garages here, like everywhere. Like they need gigs. And I think there's a way to kind of bridge. I wish I had a better answer, and I'm sure people here probably have a better answer for that. But there are so many bands I think that are maybe could be on like the verge of breaking up, but just don't even know where to start getting like a first gig, whether it be anywhere. I also want to see more house shows. I've been saying that. I think there's just so many house shows back in the day, and I don't see as many anymore. Sasquatch House, there's the Ranch, there's just like all these Metal Mansion down the street. Yeah. No, but this is good, and I wish you're asking me the things that I wish I would have thought more about, because I'm like sitting here like, oh, this is a lot of history. But no, but this is like, I think that there's so many things to think about, and I think that, you know, when it comes to like kind of bringing it back to basics, I think when it comes to getting a lot of kids involved, and I think that there's a lot of cool things that does welcome a lot of like younger people, but sometimes I want that house show. I want to go watch a band who's seriously just like nervous as fuck to play their first set, because that's exciting. There's something about that that's like really cool. Even like, I'm always surprised by that Fresno band, and it shouldn't matter regardless of like, what we were talking about earlier, regardless of like sex, regardless of age, regardless of anything like that. I just want to go see a band who wants to put themselves out there and do something cool.
And it's on our shoulders as artists too, who have been
Totally.
in the community. Like, I'll give you an example. I came to vendor fair that Priscilla puts on from Sour Milk, and we have all our vendors out here. They had like a kid band out there, and they're called Vessels for Baby.
Awesome.
And they're fucking awesome. I've never heard of them. I was riding up on my bike like, what the fuck is happening? And like, it's so nice to see them being put on flyers now. I'm like, Vessels for Baby is playing. Vessels for Baby is playing. It's like, hell yeah, foster this youth.
That's how I got first involved. That's how I know all of us, like I was saying before, we all walked into our first show just like, oh shit. Like, and I think I want to give other people that experience too, and I think all of us, and again, it's
So
a
to
group
answer
effort.
his question, it's like it is our responsibility as a community to foster the kids who are nervous and scared to play, and give them a venue, even if it's just in a dirt lot right here on Venice.
We were all those people at one point.
Exactly.
I think it takes people that are going to be willing to want to put on a show.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Like from our promoters, I think right now we're lacking promoters in Fresno.
I would like to see other people kind of get into it as well.
I think it goes back to that question.
I would like, I think right now it's like a really interesting time, because again, we're kind of like, we went through a bunch of stuff. And now, like, a lot of people are really hungry for, like, live music. We know people were writing during that time. We know people were using social media in a different way. And I think right now it's very different to put on, or even promote a show. Maybe even if you look on, like, maybe not so much like the front, like, vanity things of, like, likes and things like that, but kind of more of the back end. I bet things are very, very different on the social end of things, of what it looks like to promote a show through social channels versus, say, February 2020.
Speaking
So-
of that, like, so you said taking care of a band is properly promoting a show. Like, what is do you have an equation for it, or is it like,
No.
you know?
No, I don't.
unpredictable.
I don't. It's so unpredictable. I think I have like my basics. I mean, the thing is like the basic is, you're gonna be like design the flyer that kind of catches somebody's attention. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Putting it on your on Instagram, Facebook, but then what does it look like to keep those things going? Like, what does it look like to kind of keep posting a flyer, or versus say, Facebook events versus Instagram versus printing, going to Kinko's and printing a flyer to somebody, or even putting it up around, like I used to put them all the time up around Bullard and Fresno High. Like, how does that translate now? I think that's something that I would also need to, if I were to do some more things like that now, like what that would look like.
Yeah, it's really fostering a relationship, right? It's like, it's dating, right? It's like you're reaching out to somebody and then you're seeing, hey, do we match? And then going out on several dates and seeing how we go and do these things. And then there's the follow-up. Yeah, but I think it's the continuation of it. It's not just like, okay, we just did our show and then we move on. It's like, no, I like you. Let's talk more. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
That is a big one, because again, like, if I was not, like I've said before, I've definitely been involved in some like scary situations and shows, but if I didn't feel like welcome to a certain extent, I would have been like, thank you, I'll see you all later. But there is something about like me, going to a show, or any of us being like essentially a kid, walking into a room and being like, what is my, you always ask yourself, like, what's the etiquette? What should I be doing? How should I be dressing?
Or at least you're hoping they're asking themselves that.
Yeah. But even for me, I'm just like, I hope I look cool here. So like, but and it's just a matter of like making people welcome, and even like if you're running the door, being like, hey, how's your day going? What's going on? And just little things like that can put somebody at ease. Whether
and bring them back with more people. Maybe.
Right. If you see, obviously, kind of like a whole conversation that's been going on, I'm not trying to get into that necessarily, but like if you see someone who maybe isn't looking well, get them water. Yeah. If there's something that's going on, it's okay. Like if someone needs help, to kind of insert yourself into those situations. And I've especially found myself in those situations. It's like, hey, buddy, you might want to back off a little bit. Hey, dude, not here. Yeah. Or hey, whoever. Like, there's some things to kind of keep in mind just to make sure that people feel welcome. I think that's important, especially right now. I've been going to some shows at Strummers that have been like very well attended, and some shows in Vegas that have been very well attended, and it's just kind of like, okay, how are we making sure right now, like we're okay in kind of keeping those things going? That was fun. Holy shit. Yeah, buddy. Did anyone else have any questions? I did have a few that I wrote down, and then I can like wrap it.
Answer them.
Okay. Somebody did ask what my proudest moment was. It was really fun to see the Religious Appeal name on the marquee over at Warner's Theater for the mixtape party that we did. If anyone went to the mixtape parties, everyone would burn like a CD or make a mixtape at home, drop it into a bag, and everyone would leave with a different mixtape from somebody else with like their Instagram handles and things like that. So we hosted one at Frank's place, but they put it on the marquee. And that was super fun. That was really fun. Then also going back to Mike Oz printing a home address in the newspaper. That was super funny. Biggest disaster. There are lots of things I think that I would change, just like some of the bigger shows that I changed. They weren't disasters, but on the back end, I wish I could change some few things, which is fine. And then also, I still think, this wasn't a disaster, but I laugh about it a lot. They just played Coachella, but Code Orange came to Fresno and 4 people paid. And I was just like, y'all just played, okay, that's funny. But yeah, then people, what would see? Another one. How do you get people at shows? Kind of some things we talked about. You kind of have to ask yourself, you're putting on a show, like, where's your heart? Especially for me, like, I kind of saw like punk and hardcore as a foundation and kind of built it from there. And like the punk and hardcore relationships that I built and kind of like expanding out from there was like really, really, really beneficial for me. And it helped me just feel like I was a part of a community with everybody. And that was just super fun.
Would you say that your excitement and who you were booking helped you convey excitement for people to get excited?
Yes, I think I look back on myself when I was younger, and I think I was just like very excited and not aware of how excited I was. Like it was just like scary sometimes. But I think that also, like, I over time I think I learned how to translate that and be like, hey, I'm excited about this, and I hope you're excited about it too, because I know the band's excited about it and whatnot. And I think that's also the reason why I booked so many local shows, because I really loved a lot of what was going on here. Even if there was no necessarily like traveling band, or even like if there was, I was excited to put at least 2 or 3 like local bands, and that was just always very, very exciting to see. Let's see. Oh, bands on getting more shows. I would just say, really be a part of the community. I got myself involved in a lot of that very early on, just because I was very curious, and essentially, or along the lines, a lot of those people became my really good friends, and then they would help me out with a lot of different things. Meeting people, I have no problem, say, if I think somebody is doing something really cool in Vegas that's kind of in line with what I'm doing, of just like messaging them like, hey, this is actually very, very cool. I think there are these avenues of communication that are really, really good, and it's really nice to even be a stranger and kind of compliment people. I think that's actually a really good thing to do. And then also just really respect what you do. I think you really have to respect what you do, even if people don't like what you're doing or don't watch your set or whatever. I mean, fuck it. If you feel it, just keep going with it. I think that's super important. But yeah, those are just some of the questions that I kind of selected. Woo! Thank you.
Yeah. So like we went through COVID and there was a lot of streaming of music and stuff like that. Do you think that's still legitimate nowadays? Like, is that a useful tool?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially right now, I don't think a lot of people are necessarily comfortable with, like, a lot of people do want to go.
Comfortability, but just like as a medium of showcasing art.
I think we show that it can be done. I don't see why it shouldn't be. I think there are a lot of people who will definitely.
I'll be 35.
You don't hear me still?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Stop.
The people that will still respect the live aspect of it, but I think as we kind of move into the digital age, sometimes those like random like Facebook sets or the Instagram live sets, like I still watch, like Jeff Tweedy from Wilco, he still does one all the time. Like I can't go to their East Coast tour, but I can watch them do like an hour set every once in a while, and that's like super fun to do. I think that keeps me really. It's a nice reminder because sometimes, say, I think that's also a good way of thinking bigger picture. If you are playing somewhere and somebody else wants to watch it, they can watch it.
A big part of it is like the engagement is missing. So it's like, have you seen it done in a proper way where like there's that viewership engagement as well, or is like
Reddit?
Where
I think so. Like
Reddit does that, from what my understanding. I'm not trying to answer his question.
No, but I think it's good to kind of hear like different.
Reddit sets in particular has a really high engagement section as a part of when an artist is displaying whatever they're doing. In this case, music. I've discovered a lot of artists on Reddit just through their sets, and many of them, not all, people are unique, will engage you when you sort of comment or do something in their forum that's part of their set. And again, I'm not trying to answer your question. I just mean that there's a lot of room for that digital output because it means that when I'm sitting at home at 12:30 and I don't want to go out,
right?
But I still want to digest the things that I'm passionate about. Again, in this case, music.
Yeah.
That's a legitimate outlet, and going forward, there's no reason it would go away.
Yeah.
I think also if I'm watching like a live stream, it doesn't mean I check that band off. I think it also kind of creates a little more energy where I want to go watch them.
Yeah.
And especially if they're kind of like noodling around like, hey, here's a new song, and they're kind of showing that they're keeping things going and they want to be active, it makes me still want to be active with that band. Yeah. I think that is a fear sometimes with some bands. It's just like there isn't necessarily an easy way for everybody to monetize off of it, but I think just kind of keeping that general curiosity and that those people kind of engaged and whatnot, like I was still reminded of like a lot of my favorite bands during like when you couldn't leave the house. And I think that was something I still think about, like some of those like live streams and whatnot, and I think it's still cool to do. Actually, I was just thinking about like when Brother Luke did one.
Oh,
that was really fun. That was really fun,
Yeah.
and I saw like a lot of my friends like here kind of chiming in, and I think it's cool to do. I think there's different approaches you can take. Like it doesn't always need to be a bedroom. I'm trying to explore to do these things where we do in Vegas venues to kind of like, I think that there's a lot of spaces we can do some really cool things in. It's just, I think there's some cool brainstorming sessions that could go of like what you're really trying to convey and how you kind of put your own message out there through like your songs and anything else. I mean, take for example like Tiny Desk.
Yeah.
No one watches the Tiny Desk and just crosses it off the list. It's like, you know what I mean? Like you're like, fuck, I want to go see that. I think that there's so many cool things you can do as we get more into like social and kind of digital era things, you know?
I want to stay on that because, you know, that's a fantastic idea, the idea of hybrids, and I think we can make that happen. And, you know, good thing, you know, Eddie Numskull's here, Strummers, that's also a possibility. So, between the both of you, like, how would you expand that idea if you actually wanted to do that practicality 2022 in the future?
I feel like I've thought about it more so vague, I guess on a vaguest sense of how I'm trying to explore this,
Right.
and I'm doing this right now. Like, I think that there are some cool artists that are coming through that maybe don't get the full love. So say, I'm gonna throw this out because it didn't happen. And I was like bummed about it. So we have a cool club in Vegas called On the Record. And it's just like Silk Sonic will go do surprise sets there. I think it's a cool spot, and it's not like so like intense in your face music. And I thought it would be really cool, say like Caroline Polachek, who I love, opened up for Dua Lipa. It's like, what if we did like a Caroline Polachek, not opening, but kind of like spotlighting her, things like that. So I think that there's ways to kind of explore, say, people that are coming through, but maybe don't get the full love they deserve. And that's just kind of where my head, on I guess a base level, kind of goes right now, because I think there's lots of love to give to lots of artists, even when they're on like a lineup. Yeah, that's just kind of like things that I'm thinking about.
Absolutely. No, I'm glad you talked about that because, listen, being disabled, being immunocompromised, all that kind of stuff, streaming allowed for things that most people wouldn't even conceive of. And so I don't want that to stop now that things are quite, quote unquote, going back to normal.
Yeah.
So I'm loving this approach.
I think we learned a lot. Like, it's not just like, okay, we're done, kind of drop these.
Exactly.
I think with kind of keeping connected and things like that, there's some really important things to talk about, or to kind of keep going. And that's why I was saying, like, if you had a show that was going on in February 2020, could be very different now, whether it be getting the word out, or you just kind of see more attendance because people are really hungry for music, or maybe the algorithm's working differently, so maybe some shows are not as well. I think there's just lots of things to kind of think about,
well,
too.
Also sellouts, too. It's like, okay, well, you can still, like, if capitalism is the game, it's like, well, you can make more money charging from if you you're at max capacity.
Yeah.
So just options.
Lots of fun things to think about. Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you. That was my first time talking about any of that stuff, so that was like really fun. Thank you.